The trunk sat by the kitchen door with the lid closed and the leather straps buckled tight. Inside were 2 dresses, a coat with patches on both elbows, a hairbrush missing half its bristles, a Bible her mother had given her, and a tin box containing $4.37. Everything Mabel Crane owned in the world fit in a trunk small enough that she could carry it herself if she had to. She had carried it before. She would carry it again. She stood at the stove with her back to the door, stirring a pot of stew that nobody had asked her to make, and when she heard boots on the porch steps, she did not turn around. Some people leave quietly, and some people leave only after they have been begged to stay. If you have ever walked away from something that needed you more than it knew how to say, drop the name of your city in the comments below. I want to see how far heartbreak travels when it wears work boots and an apron. Subscribe if you believe some people do not know what they have until the door is already closing. Because what happened in that Wyoming ranch house kitchen in the autumn of 1881 taught one cowboy that silence costs more than words ever could. Mabel had been cooking at the Double Creek Ranch for 8 months. She had answered an advertisement in a Cheyenne newspaper that said, "Cook wanted, room and board, $15 monthly, must be sturdy and reliable." Sturdy meant fat, she knew that. Reliable meant desperate enough to stay when the work got hard. She was both. She took the job. She rode 2 days on a stagecoach to reach the ranch, and when she climbed down from the coach with her trunk in her arms, the ranch foreman, a man named Guthrie with gray in his beard and kindness in his eyes, looked at her and said, "You are the first cook who showed up when they said they would. That is a good start." The ranch ran 200 head of cattle and employed 6 men year-round, 7 during the summer drives. They worked from dawn until dark. They came in tired and hungry and covered in dust or mud or snow, depending on the season. Mabel's job was to feed them. Breakfast before sunrise, lunch packed in tins they carried to the range, supper at sundown, bread twice a week, laundry on Mondays, mending when it was needed. She lived in a small room off the kitchen with a narrow bed and a window that faced east so the sun woke her every morning whether she wanted it to or not. The men were polite. Guthrie said thank you after every meal. The others nodded or tipped their hats. One of them, a young man named Samuel with red hair and freckles across his nose, always told her the food was good, even when it was just beans and cornbread. But there was one man who never spoke to her at all, Cole Brennan, the ranch owner's son, 32 years old, tall, broad-shouldered, quiet in the way of men who had learned that words could hurt and had stopped using them to be safe. He sat at the end of the table farthest from the kitchen. He ate whatever she put in front of him. He never complained. He never complimented. He never looked at her longer than it took to nod when she refilled his coffee. He was a ghost at his own table. For the first 6 months, Mabel told herself it did not matter. She was there to cook, not to be noticed. But something shifted in the spring. She had been making bread one morning, her hands deep in the dough, the kitchen warm from the oven, and she had started humming without thinking. An old hymn her mother used to sing. She did not realize she was doing it until she looked up and saw Cole standing in the kitchen doorway. He was staring at her, not at her body, at her face, at her hands in the dough, at the steam rising from the oven. He looked like a man seeing something he had forgotten existed. "Do you need something?" she asked. He blinked, shook his head, turned and walked away. After that, he started showing up in the kitchen at odd times, not during meals, between them. He would come in and refill his canteen at the pump, or sharpen a knife at the whetstone by the door, or check the wood box to see if it needed filling. He never stayed longer than a minute. He never spoke. But he was there, and Mabel noticed. She noticed the way he moved carefully around the space she occupied, like he was afraid of crowding her. She noticed the way he always left the kitchen cleaner than he found it. She noticed the way he looked at the food she made, not with hunger, but with something closer to relief. In July, one of the ranch hands, a man named Pritchard who drank too much and talked too loud, made a comment at supper. Mabel had just set down a platter of fried chicken and Pritchard looked at it, and then looked at her and said, "You must eat a lot of your own cooking, huh?" The table went quiet. Guthrie's face darkened. Samuel looked at his plate. Cole stopped chewing. He set down his fork. He looked at Pritchard. "Get out," Cole said. Pritchard laughed. "I was just, get out of this house. Get your things. Be off this ranch by morning." Pritchard's smile died. "You are firing me over a joke?" "I am firing you because you are cruel, and I am tired of it. Get out." Pritchard left. The table stayed quiet. Mabel stood by the stove with the serving spoon in her hand, and her heart beating so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Cole did not look at her. He picked up his fork and kept eating like nothing had happened. But something had happened. Someone had defended her. Not because she asked, because it needed doing. After that night, the space between them felt different, smaller. When he came into the kitchen to fill his canteen, she would pour him coffee without asking. When she needed bread, he would sit at the table and clean his rifle or mend a bridle while she worked. They did not talk. But the silence was not empty anymore. In August, Cole's father came to the ranch. His name was Brennan Sr., a man with silver hair and a voice like gravel, who had built the ranch from nothing and expected everyone to remember it. He had been in Cheyenne for 3 months on business. When he came back, he walked into the kitchen during supper and looked at Mabel the way men looked at livestock they were considering buying. "You are the new cook," he said. "Yes, sir." "You are costing me $15 a month." "Yes, sir." "That is too much. I will pay you 10. Mabel set down the pot she was holding. She looked at him. "The advertisement said 15. The advertisement was written before I saw you. 10 is fair for what you are." Cole stood up from the table. "She is worth 15. She is worth more than 15. Brennan Sr. turned to his son. "You do not make those decisions. Then I will pay the extra 5 myself, out of my wages. But she is staying at 15. Brennan Sr. stared at his son, then at Mabel, then back at Cole. "You are a fool," he said. He walked out. Cole sat back down. He did not look at Mabel, but she saw his hands shaking as he picked up his fork. That night, Mabel lay in her narrow bed and stared at the ceiling and tried to understand what was happening. A man who never spoke had spoken. A man who never defended anyone had defended her. Twice. She did not know what it meant. She did not know if it meant anything. But she thought about it until she fell asleep. In September, everything changed. Brennan Sr. hired a new cook, a woman from Laramie named Judith, thin, young, pretty in the way that men noticed and women resented. She arrived on a Tuesday with a carpet bag and a smile that did not reach her eyes. Brennan Sr. introduced her at supper. "Judith will be taking over the kitchen starting tomorrow. Mabel, you can stay on to help with the laundry and cleaning, at $10 a month." Mabel stood by the stove with a ladle in her hand. She looked at Judith, then at Brennan Sr., then at the men sitting at the table. Guthrie's jaw was tight. Samuel looked like he wanted to say something, but did not know how. Cole stared at his plate. He did not speak. He did not look up. He did not say a word. Mabel set down the ladle. She walked to her room. She pulled the trunk out from under the bed. She started packing. The next morning, Judith made breakfast. Burned biscuits, watery gravy, coffee so weak it looked like creek water. The men ate in silence. Cole ate 3 bites and pushed his plate away. He stood up and walked outside. He did not come back. Mabel spent the day washing linens and scrubbing floors. She did not go near the kitchen. At supper, Judith made stew. It was thin, undersalted. The meat was tough because she had not cooked it long enough. Guthrie ate it without comment. Samuel forced down half a bowl. Cole did not show up at all. On the 3rd day, Mabel finished packing her trunk. She had written to a friend in Cheyenne who ran a boarding house. The woman had written back and said she could work there for room and board until she found something better. It was not much, but it was something. She carried the trunk to the kitchen and set it by the door. She had one more meal to cook, a final supper. She owed them that much. She pulled out flour and lard and salt. She made biscuits the way her mother had taught her. 3 turns of the dough, no more, no less. She made gravy with the drippings from the salt pork and enough black pepper to make it sharp. She made coffee strong enough to wake the dead. She set the table. Then she stood at the stove and waited. The men came in at sundown. They saw the trunk. They saw Mabel. They did not ask. They sat down. Judith was nowhere to be seen. Brennan Sr. was in Cheyenne again. It was just the ranch hands. Just the men who had eaten her food for 8 months. Guthrie spoke first. "This is the best meal I have had in 3 days." Samuel nodded. "I am going to miss this." The others murmured agreement. Mabel did not respond. She poured coffee. She refilled the biscuit basket. She moved through the kitchen the way she had moved through it for 8 months, efficiently, quietly. without fuss. She was almost finished clearing the table when the door opened. Cole stood in the doorway. He looked at the trunk, then at Mabel, then at the empty seat at the table. He walked to the table and sat down. Mabel brought him a plate. She set it in front of him without a word. He stared at it. He did not pick up his fork. "Please," he said. Mabel stopped. It was the first time he had ever said that word to her. "Please do not stop cooking." She looked at him. His hands were clenched on the table. His jaw was tight. He was looking at the plate, not at her, like he could not bear to meet her eyes. "Your father hired Judith," Mabel said. "I know. I am being paid $10 to scrub floors." "I know." "Then why are you asking me to stay?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up. He walked to the stove. He looked at the pot where the stew had been, at the pan with the biscuit crumbs, at the coffee pot still warm on the heat. Then he turned and looked at her. "Because I have not tasted anything in 2 years," he said. "Not since my wife died. Not since I buried her and our daughter on the hill behind the barn, and came back to this house and realized everything I cooked tasted like ash. Everything I ate felt like swallowing stones. I stopped tasting. I stopped caring. I just ate enough to stay alive, and that was all." He stopped. His voice was rough. "Then you came here, and the first meal you made, the first time I ate something you cooked, I tasted it. I tasted the salt. I tasted the pepper. I tasted the butter in the biscuits. I did not know why. I thought maybe it was time. Maybe enough time had passed that things could taste like things again. But then Judith cooked, and it all went away. It all tasted like nothing again." He looked at her, really looked. "It was not time. It was you. You made food taste like something worth living for. And if you leave, I am afraid I will forget how to taste anything ever again." The kitchen was silent. The other men had stopped eating. They were all staring at Cole. Mabel stood with a dish towel in her hands, and her breath caught somewhere between her lungs and her throat. "You never said anything," she said. "I did not know how. You sat there every night and ate my food and never said one word to me. I know. I am a coward. I am so afraid of saying the wrong thing that I say nothing. And now you are leaving because I said nothing, and I cannot let you go without telling you the truth." He stepped closer. "I do not just want you to stay because you can cook. I want you to stay because when you hum while you make bread, the house feels less like a place where people died and more like a place where people live. I want you to stay because you do not look at me like I am broken. You look at me like I am quiet, and that is not the same thing." He stopped. "I want you to stay because I am halfway in love with you, and I have been too afraid to say it." Mabel's hands went slack. The dish towel dropped to the floor. She stared at him. "You are in love with me?" "Yes." "You have not spoken 10 words to me in 8 months, and you are in love with me?" "Yes." "That is the stupidest thing I have ever heard." Cole's face fell. He looked at the floor. "I know. I am sorry. I should not have said anything. You should go. I am sorry." Mabel crossed the kitchen in 3 steps. She reached up and put her hand on the side of his face. He froze. She turned his head until he was looking at her. "I did not say I was not in love with you too," she said. "I said it was stupid, because it is. Falling in love with someone who will not speak to you is the stupidest thing a person can do, but I did it anyway." Cole stared at her. "You did?" "I did. I have been in love with you since the day you fired Pritchard. I told myself it was foolish. I told myself you did not see me. I told myself I was leaving because there was no future here. But I was lying. I was leaving because staying and not being wanted by you hurt worse than leaving." "I want you," Cole said. "I want you more than I have wanted anything since I buried my family and thought I would never want anything again." Mabel's throat tightened. "Then you have to do something for me." "Anything." "You have to talk to me, not just now, not just when I am leaving. Every day. I do not care if it is 3 words or 300 words. But I will not stay for a man who loves me in silence. I have been invisible my whole life. I will not be invisible in my own home." Cole nodded. "I will talk to you. Every day, I promise. Say something now, something true. He took a breath. I think about you every morning before I get out of bed. I think about what you might cook for breakfast. I think about whether you will hum while you work. I think about the way you move through the kitchen like you are the only thing holding this place together. Because you are. You are the only reason this house feels like a home. And I am terrified that if you leave, it will just be a house again. And I cannot go back to living in a house. I need a home. I need you. Mabel's eyes filled. She did not wipe them. She let the tears come. That is the most words you have ever said to me. I have a lot more, if you will stay and let me say them. She looked at the trunk by the door, then back at Cole. I will stay, but not for $10 a month scrubbing floors. I will stay as the cook, at $15. And if your father does not like it, you tell him I am staying anyway. Cole smiled. It was the first time she had ever seen him smile. It changed his whole face. I will tell him. Guthrie cleared his throat. Does this mean we get her cooking back? Mabel laughed. It came out shaky. Yes. Samuel grinned. Best news I have heard all week. That night, after the men had gone to the bunkhouse, and the dishes were washed and the kitchen was clean, Cole stayed. He sat at the table and talked. He told her about his wife, about their daughter Pearl, about the fever that took them both in 3 days and left him alone in a house that felt too big and too empty and too quiet. He told her about the year after they died, when he worked from dawn until dark, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant breaking. He told her about the night he stood in the kitchen and realized he had not tasted food in months, had not wanted to taste it, because tasting meant feeling, and feeling meant remembering that he was still alive, and they were not. Then you came here, he said, and the first breakfast you made, bacon and eggs and biscuits with butter, I tasted the salt on the bacon, and I cried. I went outside and cried because I had not felt anything in so long, that even something as small as tasting salt felt like too much. He looked at her. You brought me back to life, one meal at a time, and I did not know how to thank you. So I said nothing. And that was wrong. I should have said something. I should have said everything. Mabel reached across the table and took his hand. You are saying it now. They sat there until the fire burned low and the kitchen grew cold, and the stars outside the window wheeled through the sky. And when Mabel finally stood to go to bed, Cole stood too. Can I ask you something? He said. Yes. Will you teach me to cook? She blinked. You want to learn to cook? I want to learn the things that matter to you, and cooking matters to you, so yes, I want to learn. Mabel smiled. Tomorrow. After breakfast, I will teach you how to make bread. The next morning, Brennan Sr. came back from Cheyenne. He walked into the kitchen and saw Mabel at the stove. He saw Judith's carpet bag sitting by the door, packed and ready to leave. He looked at his son. What is this? Judith is leaving. Mabel is staying, at $15 a month. I hired Judith, and I am unhiring her. This is my ranch now. You gave it to me last year when you retired. That means I make the decisions, and I am deciding that Mabel stays. Brennan Sr. stared at his son, then at Mabel, then back at Cole. You are going to ruin this ranch over a cook? No, I am going to save it, because Mabel is not just a cook. She is the reason any of us want to come inside at the end of the day. And if you cannot see that, then you have forgotten what a home is supposed to feel like. Brennan Sr. left. He moved into a house in town and never came back to the ranch. Cole did not mourn it. Judith left that afternoon. Mabel unpacked her trunk. She put her dresses back in the small wardrobe in her room. She put her hairbrush on the shelf. She put her Bible on the table beside her bed. She put the tin box with her money in the bottom drawer where it had always been. She stayed. Cole kept his promise. He talked to her. Every day. Sometimes in the morning while she made coffee. Sometimes at supper. Sometimes late at night when the house was quiet and they were the only two people awake for miles. He told her about the cattle, about the weather, about the fences that needed mending, about his mother who had died when he was 12, about the way he had loved his wife but had also failed her by working too much and not seeing how tired she was until it was too late. He told her things he had never told anyone, and she listened. She taught him to cook. He was terrible at first. He burned biscuits. He oversalted stew. He could not crack an egg without getting shell in the bowl, but he kept trying, and after 3 months, he could make a passable breakfast. After 6 months, he could make bread that rose properly. After a year, he could cook a full meal without her help. Not because he needed to, because he wanted to learn the language she spoke. In the spring, Cole asked her to marry him. They were standing in the kitchen. She was kneading dough. He was sharpening a knife at the whetstone. He set down the knife and walked over to her. "Will you marry me?" he asked. She did not stop kneading. "Are you asking because you love me, or because you want to make sure I do not leave?" "Both. Is that allowed?" She smiled. "Yes, that is allowed." They were married in June. Dr. Gaines rode out from town to perform the ceremony. Guthrie and Samuel and the other ranch hands stood as witnesses. They held the ceremony in the kitchen because that was where they had found each other. That was where silence had turned into words. That was where grief had turned into something that felt like hope. Mabel wore her good dress. Cole wore a clean shirt. They said their vows, standing beside the stove where she had cooked 1,000 meals. And when the ceremony was over, they ate supper at the table with the people who had watched them fall in love without ever saying it out loud. Years later, after they had buried Guthrie and Samuel and the others, after the ranch had grown and prospered, after the kitchen had fed 3 generations of ranch hands, people would ask Mabel what made her stay. What made her unpack that trunk and choose a man who had barely spoken to her? She always gave the same answer. He was not silent because he did not care. He was silent because he cared too much and did not know how to say it. And when he finally learned, he said everything. Some people speak love in words. Some people speak it in action. Some people speak it in silence that finally breaks. Cole Brennan had been silent for 2 years, and when he finally spoke, it was not to save himself. It was to keep the one person who had taught him how to taste life again from walking out the door. She stayed, not because he begged, but because when he begged, he told the truth. And the truth was this: some people are worth changing for. Some people are worth learning to speak for. Some people are worth admitting you are broken for. And sometimes, the scariest thing you can do is ask someone not to leave when you have never given them a reason to stay. Cole gave her a reason. He gave her 1,000 reasons, one word at a time, for the rest of their lives. And she stayed. Not because she had to, but because staying with someone who had learned to speak love out loud was worth more than all the silence in the world.